My formalised schooling finished with a bike accident at 15, and I know nothing at all about computers, even to this day. So how was it that I was able to help transform an entire industry? Creative problem solving, common sense, which is not too terribly common, as I'm sure you've probably worked out for yourself. This is the story. It was the early 80s, and my husband was working for Computerland, and they had this was the days when they had the old mainframes that, well, it would take up an entire building, what you'd have in your Wii phone today, and technicians were men in white coats that lived in dark little rooms, very air conditioned, because the computers couldn't handle any kind of temperature drop, and they didn't speak English, you know, they spoke computerese, and you could normally find them like surrounded in Kentucky Fried Chicken containers and Coke cans and just like doing their techie thing. And if you had a problem with your computer, then they would come out with a little trolley and with a new dumb terminal on it and replace yours, and there would be no problem because you had no control. It was all controlled by the mainframe. And then came the advent of personal computing. And all of a sudden, users could influence what was happening on their computer. The chaos, because bizarrely, nobody seemed to have thought ahead to the fact that we're still churning out mainframe technicians. Who is going to support the users in this whole new world of computing? I figured I couldn't be the only one that didn't want to try and figure out my computer and just wanted somebody else to do it for me. And every night my husband would come home and he'd be, oh God, you know, we've got all of these complaints and all of these challenges because people are wanting to know how to work their computers. And I said, well, okay, let's start up our own organisation specifically designed to supporting people like that who need software support. And so we did. And we called it GUI Care, Care for the Graphical User Interface. And basically what it was a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week membership where you would pay for the year and you'd get your special number and you'd be able to ring up on the phone and you talk to a human who talked to you like a human, didn't talk down to you, didn't make you feel stupid. They'd ring up and they'd say, Joy, how you doing? You know, how are you going with this, that, and the other thing? You were talking to a friend, because they would have all of your information on the screen in front of them. So of course it went really well because nobody else was doing it, hadn't been invented yet. And pretty soon we had more business than we could cope with, and we didn't have enough technicians. The technicians were hired on the basis that they could talk me through a problem, because frankly, if they could talk me through a problem, anyone else would be a piece of cake. So I had all these mates lined up wanting to work for us, but they were on the dole, welfare. They didn't have jobs, and so the government was paying them to do nothing. And I wasn't allowed to employ them, and I thought, this is just bizarre. So what I did was I put together a series of traineeship schemes, whereas the government would, instead of paying them, pay us. We'd add 10% more, so the person would have a decent basic wage, and they'd come and work for us for a year, and we'd train them up. And at the end of that year, they would have the opportunity to come on full-time or go wherever they want, or train in a specialised area or whatever. And in that way, you know, people would find jobs and the industry would bloom and blah, blah, blah. So I presented this excellent scheme to the government, and of course they said no, because, well, you know, it was the Australian government, and governments are much the same the world around in that regard. So, not doing well at taking no for an answer, I went on a national tour, and I got the signature of every single major computer company's leader, Apple and IBM and AT, all of them, to support the scheme and write a letter saying, yes, this is what we want to do as well. And then the government listened, and so a series of traineeship schemes were put in place where everybody could have what they needed. You know, the computer companies got the technicians got the job, the users got the support, and everybody was happy. And that's how I was the first individual ever to be nominated for an IT&T Excellence Award in industry development. Nothing that I suggested was anything other than common sense, really. But as Albert Einstein says, you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. And as brilliant as these men were, their minds had created their industry and they weren't able to step out of it to look and see that things were changing and that they needed to change with it. Things are changing again. The whole world is changing again. And it's very much bigger than the change from mainframe to PCs. Everything's shifting now. And in order to survive it, in order to thrive in it, we can't operate in the same mindset. So if you want some help with creative problem solving, stepping out of the box, looking around with a new mind, we can hook you up. You can experience joy.